Okay, trying something different today. People have been asking for a little bit more help with their spinner square mechanism. So I'm just going to record this live, meaning I'm just talking right to the camera so you kind of get what you get. So if I mess up, you get to witness that. And if my dogs bark, you get to hear that. Okay, so first things first, some recommendations. On the spinner square mechanism itself, it doesn't really much matter what weight cardstock you use, but I would recommend that you use a smooth cardstock. And that way you can really see those score lines and they won't be lost in the texture. Another thing is you can run this through twice if you need to really define those score lines in the piece. Now, a great idea, I show this in the other spinner square videos, is to take a pen or a pencil and mark X's on your mechanism die where the adhesive is going to go later. It really, really will help you with the assembly. And everything on this piece is hidden in the finished card, so you don't have to worry about marking it up with a pen. So the 5 X's you need one in the right tab, and then you need X's in the 2 left ones. I'll show you those. Okay, right here, there's a small little tab. That needs an X. And then here below the square, there's a perforation line, and then there's some triangles that are defined by score lines. And you want the X in the right triangle. So right below the perforation line, you would put an X. So these are the 5 locations that will get adhesive on this mechanism at some point. Now you can go a step further. I haven't shown this in the other videos, but this might actually be helpful for you. You can even draw in the score lines. And when I say draw them in, you don't have to get your ruler out and make sure you're right on the line because you're still going to fold it where it has been scored by the die, but this will at least help you identify them. So in that case, I'll just go in and rough those in with my pen. Let me make sure I'm on camera here. So next to that X in the right tab, there's a score line across the piece. Here next to these triangles, basically up between the triangles, there's a vertical line that goes across the whole piece. And then there are the triangles themselves. So those are defined by these diagonal lines, like this. Okay, here next to that little small tab where that X is, there's a score line here. Then if you go over here where this cut line ends and that cut line ends, between those two there's actually a little small score line in there. And you'll be able to see this on your piece because you'll have die cut it and be looking at it. There's a score line that goes across this upper platform right here, and then next to your 2 left panels there's score lines. So there's one here and there's one here. And then one last thing, we're actually going to end up folding on that perforation line, so technically you could mark an X across the perforations, not an X, a line across the perforations because that'll be a fold as well. Okay, so now look what I've done. I've just defined all my locations for adhesive and I've defined all of the scoring that I'm going to do on this piece. Okay, this little area in here is the part that's tricky for people. This is the spinner square itself, and getting this working, if you can master this, everything else is smooth sailing. So one thing I've done is I've come to your side of the camera. So typically, you know, I do my videos where I basically make everything upside down. I'm really used to it. But for today, I'm going to try and be you. So if you imagine that my hands are your hands, they're in the same position yours will be. And your first fold is going to be, I like to think of this little area where the 2 triangles and the line is as being like my champagne glass. Can you kind of see that right there? Okay, so it's the stem of the champagne glass that I want to fold first. So I'm going to fold that as a mountain fold, so away from myself. And by doing that, I'll actually be able to work these 2 diagonal folds that define the triangles at one time. So I keep my stem of my wine glass or champagne glass closed, and then I put my thumbnail into the diagonal fold that's below the X, and then I just fold through both layers. So over the top and then back out again. What I'm doing there is I'm defining these 2 diagonal folds in one shot by doing it with this one folded. So then see, I can fold through both layers. Okay, now you can really see our champagne glass, right? So here's the stem of the champagne glass, and then here's, you know, where you'd pour the champagne in, right? Okay, what we would like to do is this will always be that mountain fold. The stem of the champagne glass is always going to fold like this. But what we would like to do now is we'd like to get this upper part of the champagne glass actually folding down into the piece. So I think the easiest thing to do is up in the area of the glass, I guess, so to speak. We're trying to get that fold, that upper part, to kind of reverse so that those 2 triangles fold in. But we sort of, see how I have my hand out here too, because we also have to keep folding the stem of the wine glass because that's what's going to allow those triangles to collapse inside the piece. See, we're trying to get them to collapse in like this if you think about an origami fold. Okay, now the square's a little bit in the way, so you kind of got to push it to the back a little bit. You just get it out of the way. It's just going to go along for a ride. But we want to, you can kind of see how I'm defining it. We want these two triangles to collapse down into that piece as we fold on the stem of our champagne glass. So however it's easiest for you to do that, but see what I'm doing? Collapsing those triangles in. Okay, so here's my vertical line, that's the stem of the champagne glass, and then here's the triangles that define it, and they're collapsing down into the piece. And my square, which is attached, it's just going along for the ride, so it's just going to be in the back for right now. Okay, in fact, let's turn it around and look, and you can see what I'm talking about. So here's our two triangles that are coming into the piece, and then the stem, and our square is attached up here. Okay, back on the front again, now what we want to do is we want to bring this square over and attach it into some adhesive that we're going to put on that little X. Typically I use glue, but you can also use a glue dot. So let's do that today. Found some mini Zots here in my stash, so let me grab one of those, and we'll put a little glue dot over that X in that triangle. Okay, so on the perforation line, now what's going to happen is the square is going to come over into that glue dot. So on the square itself, the only section of the square that's actually attached is right here where that triangle is underneath. These three areas of the square are just loose, and they can spin as those triangles collapse down into the piece. So we want the exact same thing to happen. All we've done is moved the triangle from back here, not the triangle, the square, from back here to in the front. But that wine glass is still there, that champagne glass is still there. It's still going to want to do the same thing, which is as we close the stem, the triangles come in. See, I'm on the back of the piece now, but see, as I close the stem, the triangles collapse in, just like before. Okay, let's look on the front. As we close the stem, the triangles collapse in, the square spins. See, as we open the champagne glass, the square spins. As we close it, the square spins. So that's what does it. It's that little piece of square attached to the triangles, and the triangles are collapsing inward, and in doing that, they take that square on a little ride, and it's going to spin. So however long it takes you to get that mechanism, just do it. You can rewind this video, play it over and over and over again, but if you can just master that spinner square, it's very much smooth sailing from here. Okay, moving on. There is a fold line next to our right tab there, next to that X, so we'll fold that under. That'll be a mountain fold, so away from you. Okay, let's go to this end of the piece. Both of these X's get mountain folds on their score lines. Okay, this X here, oops, sorry, make sure I'm on camera. This little X right here, that small tab, that's a little mountain fold as well. Okay, and then the last thing we need to do is our little zigzag fold. So what I mean by that is we have a little fold here, and we have a long fold here. And this fold here is just the short one. In other words, it doesn't go all the way across the piece. The easiest way to find it is actually just to pivot this section up and see how it'll just find that little fold for you. Let's do that again. So we've got our piece flat here. Take the upper one, twist it up this way. That'll find that little fold for you. And then this long one, that one should be a mountain fold, because what we're making here is our upper platform. So see, when you look at it from the side, you're going to have a little upper table, so to speak. That's your upper platform right there. Okay, now let's flatten this back out again and take a look at things. Okay, out here you'll notice that these two X tabs end in a different location. But if we engage this little zigzag fold we just made, so in other words, pivot on the valley and then fold down on the mountain, just like that. Then by putting that zigzag fold into the piece, now our two X panels end at the same location. So that's what we're looking to do. We're looking for this position when we attach it inside the card. And we'd also like, if we have our square with the this way, trying to figure out what to say. If we have our square where it's hanging down below the piece here, let's go ahead and collapse the wine glass so that our square spins out so that it's sideways, okay? So like if I look, so on this time I can see these two X's, and then when I turn it over, look what I can see. I can see X with a blank panel, X with a blank panel, okay? So once we have it in this position, it's ready to go inside the card. Now, what size card? I don't care. Where along the fold, doesn't matter to me. You're the boss, so you can decide where to put this in a card that you would like it to go. But wherever you put it, on camera, there we go, you would want these two ends of the X panels right in the fold of the card for placement. Okay, and then like I said, it can go anywhere along the fold. Well, how are you going to make your decision? Well, you've got a square that's going to attach over the top of that upper platform, but it kind of can go anywhere, so you can kind of adjust that. But then you're going to put a spinner arm on this one here to, you know, spin out in the card. So maybe that makes a difference to you as to where you want it. So that's completely up to you. But making your decision, so let's say I want to go right here. Then I'm just going to add my strong adhesive. I definitely recommend either glue, a strong double-sided tape, some glue dots, but probably not a tape runner. I feel like your tape runner will come unstuck, but glue shouldn't. Okay, so I've got glue on my two X panels. I've made sure they're right up in the fold of the card. I'm going to close that card against that exposed glue. Okay, and give it a second just to set up. Okay, so what I've done is I've actually attached those X's over to this side of the card. So even though we placed it over here, we had the adhesive on top so that when we closed against the adhesive, it actually attaches them over here. And we have both of our X tabs in the correct position now to be able to do the same thing. And that's why I said to kind of make sure that you could see an X and a blank panel right next to them before you attach these tabs. Okay, so how we do that, we add our adhesive to those two exposed X tabs. Again, making sure it's nice and flat. Close that card against it. And just give it a second. Okay, I usually like to go kind of slow when I first open it. Sometimes that little small tab, it's so small, will kind of pop off the page. The mechanism still works, so you don't have to worry too much about that tab, but you can reattach it. So in other words, I can even go in here, keep going until this is flat, tuck that little X under, and give it a press. Okay, but that little small tab, I know some people have said, oh, it's kind of small. It is small, but it's also not very important to the function of the card. It will work even without it. Okay, so there's your spinner square. So see how it's attached there? So you've got those two X panels attached to this side of the fold, and then you have your other two X's attached to the base of the card. And then this is the thing that spins. Okay, so the die set comes with squares that you can attach to your upper platform, and then it comes with a rectangle die to convert from a spinner square into a spinner arm. Okay, so the way we would do that is you can do it like this with the card closed, you can do it with it open, it doesn't matter. But basically when it's open, your arm's shooting this way, and when it's closed, it'll come up to that vertical position. How do we attach it? You only get to put adhesive on these three sides of the square. So in other words, not the one that caves down into our champagne glass, just the other three. So like an L of adhesive. And then you can line up the corner of that rectangle with the corner of that square. Those are sized exactly to fit each other. Okay, so see there, now we've, oops, well, I guess got to stick to that. Hang on. Okay. Oh my gosh, how funny. Okay, live video. There we go. Okay, so when the card closes, the arm goes up. When the card opens, it spins out this way. Now, if that's not long enough of an arm for you, you can just cut more rectangles. And your only limitation is in the closed position, the card needs to hide it. So it sort of depends on how big a card you had. But see, I've got quite a bit of room there for an extra arm. So I could just take maybe even my tape runner with a little line of adhesive and extend my arm with a second rectangle. And then now look, see, that's all hidden by the card, but look how long that arm is. So I can really get some things out here on the side to have some fun with that. Okay, and then to hide sort of the whole mechanism and stuff, you would use your adhesive here on this upper platform and add your big square or a big label or, you know, whatever you want. The die set comes with that big square. It doesn't really matter where it goes. You know, it sort of depends, I guess, what you want to see. If you want it higher, you could add another one if you wanted it to be a rectangle instead of a square. Doesn't really much matter. Give it a good press. Okay, so there is the spinner square. So you can see how generic that is. I can put anything on that arm. You know, I can decorate this any way I want. And hopefully that helps you be more successful with the spinner square die set.